All right, so it's 1801. We've got a new president in power. Not only a new president, but we've got an entire new Congress. And basically the government, except for the judicial branch, is now in the hands of these Republicans. So what we're going to see is how Jefferson and the Republicans do things differently than Washington, Adams, and the Federalists had done while they were in power during this first decade of the constitutional government. So in order to do that, we need to look at Jefferson. So we've talked about Jefferson's basic ideals. This is a guy who professes to love liberty, believes that national government should have limited power, generally believes people are good, and pushes for this expansive democracy. And as we talked about, he's kind of already getting a little bit of what he wants in the fact that the United States has become more democratic by 1801. More states have lifted property restrictions off voting for the House of Representatives, and we've already seen a number of states that will allow their people to vote for president. So you're getting that aspect. How about the rest of it? How's Jefferson going to implement his ideals when he takes over as president? Well, one of the things that's going to be different under Jefferson is the fact that he's going to serve the entire first term out of Washington, D.C. So, as we talked about, part of the debt assumption deal to get the southern states to approve of taking on the state debt was to have this new capital located in the south, halfway between or in between Maryland and Virginia. Jefferson's going to be the first to serve out of Washington. Now, the thing is, Washington, as it's being constructed, there wasn't really anything there before the government. It was a swamp. There was a handful of people, but for the most part, it was just this backwater place. Well, Washington drained the swamps there, and at this point, it's going to be where you have the Capitol building where Congress is going to meet, and you're going to have the White House where the president's going to meet. But as we'll talk about, it's not going to be much of anything for the future. But again, this is going to make Jefferson different than previous administrations because he'll serve out of Washington, D.C. All right, well, what about Jefferson's personal views and his politics after taking over as president? Well, one thing that's going to be different about Jefferson is that, well, I shouldn't say it's different. You should probably characterize Jefferson as taking over the president as not reinventing the presidency and not completely doing things different than Adams or Washington. So he's just going to reorient things, not reinvent, but reorient, okay? He's going to bring things more in line with his political leanings, but he's not going to completely get rid of everything that Adams and Washington had done and the reforms that Hamilton had pushed through as Washington's Secretary of Treasury. And you can see this in his administration. So one thing Jefferson will do is he is going to get rid of the prominent Federalists in the cabinet. So when John Adams had taken over for Washington as president, he'd kept a lot of his cabinet members and a lot of high-up officials in the executive branch. Jefferson's not going to do that. If you're a higher up, you got to go. You're Adams' ally, you're a Federalist, you're gone. I'm going to replace you with my buddies. So Jefferson's going to have his own Secretary of War, his own Secretary of Treasury, his own Attorney General. And he's going to make his right-hand man his Secretary of State, this guy, James Madison. We've talked about him before. He's number one, number two in the Republican Party. Secretary of State, obviously an important position. It's the guy that deals with foreign affairs. I want you, James Madison, as my right-hand man. Obviously, his VP at this time is Aaron Burr. He's not going to be inviting him to cabinet meetings. So he's going to replace top Federalist office holders with his own guys. But the thing about Jefferson, he's not going to completely clear house in the federal government. So as executive, you have the power to, command the army. You're commander-in-chief. You also have the power to, duty collectors, tax collectors. We'll talk about that more in a minute here. But you're in charge of executing the orders of the legislative branch. So this means he's in charge of a lot of jobs. Well, hypothetically, Jefferson could have said, if you're a Federalist, you're gone from the Army. If you are a Federalist, I'm firing you as a duty collector. He's not going to do that. Basically, if it's a position that's not political, Jefferson is going to let Federalists stay. For example, the head of the Army at the time, a guy named James Wilkinson, Prominent Federalists didn't like Jefferson, didn't support him. Well, Jefferson's going to look at this position and say to Wilkinson, hey, I know we have our political disagreements, but as commander-in-chief, will you respect me, do your job? James Wilkinson's going to say, yep. Thomas Jefferson's going to say, stay in charge of the Army. That's a mistake, by the way. We won't get into in this class why, but that is a Federalist that Thomas Jefferson is going to support. Same thing with lower Federalists. If you're an Army officer, you're a Federalist, that's fine, just do your job. Duty collector, that's fine, do your job. Somebody who's handling land sales for the U.S. government, fine, keep your job. So he's going to get rid of some top tier officials, but not get rid of all Federalists. He's not just going to say, I win, I get everything. He doesn't do that. He's going to keep a lot of people on, even if they're political adversaries. So that's one thing Jefferson's going to do. Another thing in this reorient but not reinvent things is he's not just going to clear house with everything that Washington and Adams had done. For example, Jay's Treaty. The United States had signed Jay's Treaty 1795, agreeing to give Britain this favorable economic positions, and then to not trade directly between French ports. Well, Jefferson didn't like Jay's Treaty at all, protested it, hated it along with his fellow Republicans. But the thing is, he's going to respect it. We signed it until 1805. It's a 10-year treaty. I'm going to have to respect it for my first term as president. So it's on the books. Nothing I can do about it. So he will respect Jay's Treaty. He's not going to push to get rid of it. We agreed to be under it for 10 years. We're going to stick to it for 10 years. Same thing with the National Bank. Jefferson didn't like the National Bank, felt it was unconstitutional. But in 1791, the U.S. agreed to be under this national bank for 20 years. Doesn't expire until 1811. Jefferson's going to say, I don't like the national bank, but we agreed to do it, so we're going to stick to it. So not just going to trash everything. He basically says we're going to keep the things we promised to keep. Keeps the tariff on incoming manufactured goods. Again, Hamilton got a tiny increased tariff on incoming manufactured goods. Jefferson is going to keep that. Now, he is going to get rid of some Federalist things that have been passed during the previous administrations. For example, Alien and Sedition Act. That had been set to expire right as soon as Jefferson took office, which was kind of interesting that Madison had put that in place. Or I'm sorry, Adams had put that in place in case he didn't win the presidency. Well, Jefferson, hypothetically, Republicans are controlling Congress, could have gotten that put back in place. Now I'm president. I don't want people to talk smack about me. But he's going to say, no, I said it was wrong then. When I'm in power, I still think it's wrong. He lets it expire, doesn't push for renewal of the Alien Sedition Acts. He is going to get rid of, so he gets rid of the Alien Sedition Acts, and he's also going to get rid of that whiskey tax. And Adams had put some additional taxes on a couple other items. Jefferson gets rid of it. He thought, this is excessive. A lot of Republicans, a lot of people who supported the Republican Party in these western areas because they didn't like the whiskey tax. Now that I'm president, I'm going to get rid of this. So he gets rid of all taxes, and under Jefferson, the only way the national government's going to make money is on duties on incoming and outgoing goods, imports and exports. And in land sales in the West. That's it. So no taxes. Jefferson says, I didn't like taxes before. They're gone. Now he's able to do this because he's going to fulfill another promise of the Republicans, and that's going to be to reduce the size of the National Army. So under Adams, the National Army during the Quasi-War had gotten up to 10,000 men. So that was a huge National Army. This made Jefferson nervous, the Republicans nervous. Again, they didn't want this powerful government with this large National Army. So what Jefferson's going to do is he's going to reduce the size of the National Army down to 2,500. Now, he doesn't get rid of it entirely, but he is going to dramatically reduce it to bring it more in line with the Republican principles. So basically, he will reduce, reorient, but not completely reinvent the government under the Federalists. Keep some things, keep some people in office, but he's going to start doing things his way. Maybe think about making the government smaller, but not completely getting rid of the national government altogether. All right, so Jefferson takes office. This is one of his big deals, make the government smaller, reorient things. Another one of Jefferson's big principles as President of the United States is going to be to promote westward expansion. So Jefferson will always talk about this idea of an empire for liberty. He would love if North America as a whole eventually adopted United States Republican principles, the Democratic Republican principles. And the way Jefferson's going to look at things is that this is actually possible. So the way he sees Canada, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but he sees it as a bunch of people up there that don't like to be under British rule. Eventually they're going to come in, they're going to overthrow the British, and they'll adopt these principles that the United States has set forth. And he's going to look to the western area, west of this United States, and he's going to see this territory nominally controlled by Spain. So Spain claims that it owns the land all the way from this Mississippi River in Florida, eastern to Florida, all the way up to northern Canada, into areas that have barely been explored yet. So Spain claims all this area as its own, but in reality, the Spanish don't control that much territory. The Spanish have officials in Louisiana, although the population of Louisiana even was 40 years after the 7 Years' War when Spain took this over. The area is still mainly French. People that are French ancestry, French speaking. Just have a handful of Spanish and French Spanish officers here, Spanish officials, but the population remains French speaking and of French ancestry. So there are a couple thousand people, maybe 50,000 people in this Louisiana area. Spain claims Florida, but outside of a couple hundred soldiers, a little bit more than 1,000, let's go maybe 2,000 in Florida, they don't have a lot of people here. Same thing, Texas. There's maybe 4,000 people in Texas in 1800. The Spanish have maybe 30, 40, 50,000 in New Mexico, and they've recently established missions up here in California, but they've got a couple thousand at most. So Spain, out of all this western area, has tops 80,000, and again, that's an estimate on my part, and you compare that to the United States, which by 1800 has 5 million. So Jefferson, he's not worrying about Canada just yet, but he looks at this western area and he basically says Spain is in decline. They have not properly populated this western area. And what I think and what I would like to do is eventually take over Florida, take over this western area, and he thinks this can be done easily. At the time, Spain is ruled by this king that's incredibly incompetent. The people here, Jefferson believes, look at the United States with jealousy. They're basically saying, we would like this Republican government as well. And he basically thinks that this area we can incorporate this into this United States. Again, the Spanish, tons of problems at home, spending money poorly, this bloated bureaucracy, and the way Jefferson says is, again, maybe the U.S. can eventually take this area over. So he has this vision of turning North America into an empire for liberty, and it looks like something that can happen because of the way that Spain is ruling things. They're just improperly ruling, haven't been able to properly populate this region. Well, Jefferson's thinking this, but something is going to happen right as soon as he enters the presidency that's going to put a little bit of a deterrent in his plans, or block his plans somewhat. And that's going to be in 1800, this new ruler of France, this guy, Napoleon Bonaparte, is going to make a deal with the King of Spain. Okay? So what happens is Napoleon is made peace with Britain. So as we've talked about before, the French and British constantly fighting. Well, in 1799, France had been going through this 10 years of revolution. Things are chaotic. You have one government replacing another. Well, 1799, this French officer, fairly young guy that's extremely militarily capable, is going to solidify power around himself, centralize authority in France, and basically make himself an emperor. Now, he's not initially going to call himself an emperor, but he'll get around to that label very, very soon. He's going to centralize authority around himself. Peace will be made with Britain, and there's going to be a temporary pause in fighting between France and Britain. But at this point, Napoleon is going to say, we're constantly fighting with Britain for who's the top dog on the planet. I know we're going to get into war again. So with this centralized authority, Napoleon is going to start consolidating his forces, start getting his money together for this, what he sees as an upcoming war with Britain. So let's get as many resources as possible, start gathering money together to pay soldiers, build up our navy. He's thinking about possible invasion of Britain when this next war comes up. So he's going to use this temporary pause in fighting to expand France's power. Well, one of the ways that Napoleon's going to do that is to talk to the King of Spain and convince him to sell territory in the New World to France. So France, Napoleon basically goes to the King of Spain. The King of Spain is, again, this guy that's incredibly incompetent. He's got some mental issues. There's a lot of crazy stuff I don't know how I should get into, but his foreign minister sleeping with his wife, he just can't keep anything straight, and he's going to have this Napoleon. Napoleon is in charge of the world's most powerful army. He's going to come to the King of Spain. Spain at this point, again, lower population. They still got a lot of money coming in from the New World, but it's being spent improperly. He's got this powerful guy, Napoleon, coming down to him, and Napoleon is going to push the idea of selling some land that France owns in Italy to Spain in exchange for land in the New World. So basically, what Napoleon wants to purchase is the area, at least most of the area west of the Mississippi that France had controlled prior to 1763 when the French gave this to the Spanish. So this area called Louisiana, and as we've talked about before, Louisiana was based off these claims by Robert La Salle that France owns all the land that touches these rivers that flow into the Mississippi, and the French had populated this region from around 1700 to 1763 before handing it to Spain. So Napoleon will approach the King of Spain and say, I would like this area back. And again, in exchange, you're going to get this land over here. And, a couple cash incentives as well. Well, Spain is going to look at this. This is a tiny bit of territory France is offering for a lot of territory in the New World. So it doesn't make a lot of sense if you just compare the land. But if you're Spain, it is going to make some sense because they'd never used this land very well. And as a matter of fact, Louisiana had always been a cash sink for the Spanish. They'd had to throw soldiers up here. They had to throw all these government officials. And in return, they got a couple agricultural products, but they could have gotten these same agricultural products from their colonial territories in the Caribbean. So sure, we're getting some tobacco, rice, stuff like that from here, but we're not making a lot of money. It's not worth the cost that we're putting into it. So that's one reason that the Spanish want to sell this Louisiana to France. Another reason is they're concerned about the United States. They've been seeing this population of the U.S. double every 20 years or so, and they're concerned, rightfully, because Jefferson had been having eyes on this Western North America, that the United States will eventually take Louisiana, then take Texas, and then they're going to be at Spain's cash cow, these silver mines in northern and central Mexico. This is the stuff that Spain's truly concerned about. If you're U.S. history, Texas history, that type of stuff, it's hard to believe that Spain doesn't care about this stuff, but they really don't. They're cash cows down here. So the Spanish basically think if things continue to go this way, the U.S. might take this territory, then their silver mines, and they're concerned maybe the British will do the same thing. The British, who knows, they might come this direction, push down here and start taking Spanish possessions in northern Mexico. But the French, if they move in, they could serve as a buffer. So the French are generally allies with Spain, and even if they're not allies with Spain, they're probably not going to populate Louisiana quick enough and with enough people to be a threat to the silver mines down here. But they will populate enough, and they're going to bring their army in enough to provide a buffer to the British and the United States. So they'll bring enough people to come in to prevent expansion from these two areas, but not enough people to prevent to come in and take their silver mines. So the way the Spanish look at this is the French will serve as a shield for our good stuff, protect it from these two expansionist powers. So if you think about it that way, selling Louisiana for a couple possessions in Europe, it kind of makes sense. We're not using it anyway, and we need somebody to deter the United States and the British from taking Louisiana. So in 1800, in a secret agreement, the Spanish king and Napoleon will exchange this Louisiana. Now the thing is, France isn't immediately going to take it over, and as a matter of fact, the treaty is not going to be made public until 1801. But even when it's made public, it's going to take a while for France to get together officials, send them over. Take a while for Spain to remove its troops, the French to replace them with their troops. So 1801 to 1803, just think about, it's French in name, but the Spanish are still going to be in charge of it. And in a lot of areas, you're not going to see even the French flag raised because, as we're going to see, another power will be taking over very quickly. So on paper, Louisiana has now been sold to France. So why did the French buy this Louisiana area? Again, it didn't sound like the Spanish were using it. Well, Napoleon, again, he's planning for this next phase of the war, and he sees Louisiana as a key to making a different area of the French Empire profitable. So France had maintained control of a number of islands in the Caribbean, in particular this western half of what was Hispaniola, this area Haiti. Haiti had been given to the French by the Spanish a long time back, 1699, 1700, something like that. And from 1700 until 1800, Haiti had made the French a ton of money. A couple other sugar islands over here as well. The reason that Haiti made so much money is that the French had started importing hundreds of thousands of African slaves to Haiti. Actually, I think that number's in the millions of African slaves to Haiti, and they would use these African slaves to grow this extremely profitable crop, sugar. So, we talked about this before, but sugar is something that is difficult to grow. It only grows in places where it doesn't freeze. It requires 2 years or so of growing, and if it freezes at any point during that 2 years, the crop's ruined. So obviously, just about anywhere in the mainland America, that's not going to grow. Now, it'll grow in coastal regions, and it grows really well in the Caribbean. And so the French had been growing this sugarcane, but it's it's very labor intensive, meaning you got to cut down these stalks. They're hard. They cut up your hands when you're cutting it. And this can lead to a lot of infections, and it can especially lead to a lot of deaths in places like the Caribbean, where disease like yellow fever, malaria are prevalent just because of the ways mosquitoes operate and the way disease operates in warmer climates. So the French have this island that grows this sugar cane, and what they've done through 1700s is from 1700 to 1800s just import these hundreds of thousands, again probably in the millions, of African slaves to grow this sugar cane. And the French had made tons of money off of these islands, in particular Haiti. They made tons of money off this, but there have been a couple problems with this sugarcane production. Again, you can think of this industry driven by slave labor. The second that France imports the sugar back to the mainland Europe, everybody wants it. Sugar's addictive. It just tastes good. It's a simple carbohydrate. Our body, whenever it tastes sugar, it says we want more of that. Give it to us, because it doesn't take much energy to break down, but it provides a lot of energy. They didn't know that science back then, but they knew sugar tasted good. So when it got to Europe, they made tons of money. Well, the problems with the sugar production in Haiti is, one, that it could be blockaded by the British. So the British have a powerful navy, and what had happened during previous wars, we talked a little bit about this in past lectures, is what the British would do is they would blockade these French sugar islands. France wouldn't be able to get this profitable sugar there. And this is another problem, is they wouldn't be able to get food to these islands. A lot of times the French would import food. France is very fertile, food to these islands, and to feed the slave population and the handful of French people that lived on the island, to keep the sugar cane going. Well, with these English blockades, you're not going to be able to get food there. So what France had been forced to do, and they had to do this to an extent before, is turn a lot of the sugarcane fields into growing food. So, we have, I'm making these numbers up here, 100 acres of sugar over here, but, we can't, or let's say we have 400 acres capable of growing sugar, but the problem is that we can't use all 400 acres for sugar because we need to use 300 acres to grow food for the slave population. Obviously, people need food. And so what they would do is, again, making this numbers up, 300 acres of corn and, wheat or something like that. And then you have the 100 acres of sugar cane. And it had always been like this, but the British blockade in these previous wars had exacerbated the problem to where you had to devote a lot of Haiti to growing food instead of sugarcane. Well, Napoleon wants to increase the sugarcane output of Haiti because he wants to make more money to pay for soldiers, Navy ships, that type of thing. And one of the ways he thinks he can do that is by taking this new Louisiana that we're getting from Spain and using it entirely to grow food. So we can get food there. That means that 300 acres that we made up, and we just, we're pretending here, but that 300 acres that was previously growing corn, we can now use it to grow sugarcane. And the British blockade is not going to be effective because we can just shoot right down from Louisiana to Haiti and get past any British blockades. So the way the French look at things is, if we bring this food from Louisiana down here to Haiti, it's going to be quick, and we can maximize sugar production. Maximize sugar production means maximize military production. So French buy Louisiana as basically a food mill for Haiti. By the way, Louisiana, the French also buy it as, they see it as a way to buffer. They aren't concerned as much about the United States, but a way to prevent the British from expanding to the Pacific. Napoleon wants that as well. So the minor thing is they want to buffer to prevent British from expanding, but the big thing is they want to grow food for France's profitable sugar islands. More sugar means more military. All right, so this deal goes through. Jefferson learns about it right as he's taking over the presidency in 1801. What do you think Jefferson thought about this? Well, we've talked about this before. Jefferson loves France. He loves French culture. He loves French food. He loved what was going on in the French Revolution. He liked that, there was this push towards Republican government, getting rid of the king, and he liked in general the idea of France. He was just fascinated by the art, the science, the everything of France, having spent time there as an ambassador to the Articles Confederation government. So he loves France. But this new purchase hurts his idea of this empire for liberty. Not only that, the France that takes over in 1801 isn't the France that Jefferson fell in love with. Jefferson likes the idea of Republican France. That's not there anymore. Napoleon's in power now. Napoleon's essentially a king with a different name, so it's not this Republican government. It's now essentially a monarchy or an empire under Napoleon, and that makes Jefferson nervous. So even though he loves France, he doesn't like French Louisiana because the way he saw things is, the United States could easily, maybe not easily, but could a lot more. Oh, what the heck just happened here? Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. I don't know what the heck just happened. The United States could easily take over this area from Spain, who was dying, but France is powerful. This idea of expansion in the West just made a lot more difficult by the French and their more competent military. So this makes Jefferson nervous. And it makes him particularly nervous that the fact that France now controls the end of the Mississippi River. So this bottom area right around New Orleans, the French are not only going to control the western side of the Mississippi, but they're also going to control the eastern side. So that means they can block commerce in the Mississippi. This is going to be a problem because you got all these U.S. merchants, a good percentage of them, especially up here. In order to get their goods to market, they can't go east over the mountains. They got to bring them downriver, down the Mississippi, to get them over to areas in the Northeast or areas in Europe. But you now can't do that if the French say you can't do that. So we'd made a treaty with Spain in 1795 allowing commerce down there, but now that France controls it, are they going to do the same thing? They can basically shut off U.S. commerce, which means shutting off U.S. westward expansion, essentially because they now control both sides of Mississippi. So Jefferson is concerned, to say the least. This basically puts his empire of liberty on hold. Well, fortunately for Jefferson, something is going to happen outside of the United States that will put an end to Napoleon's plans for Louisiana. And this is something that actually been happening before the French bought Louisiana, but it's something that's going to come to a head right after they purchase it. And this something is going to be something that had been occurring on Haiti since 1789. So in 1789, we're going to see the beginning of a revolution in Haiti. So it's at the same time that we have the revolution in France. So 1789, you had the French Revolution, where the poor middle class of France rose up against the elites, eventually beheading the king, and then starting this push towards a more republican government. Well, when this starts happening in France, you're going to see one particular group in Haiti start calling for Enlightenment reforms, and the same thing that a lot of people in France are fighting for. And you're going to see a revolution in Haiti very similar. So Haiti, this French colony, will also revolt like the people in France. Well, the group that's going to be doing the revolting in Haiti is different than the group that's going to be doing the revolt in France. And it's different because different race, okay? So the way that Haiti was set up, you had, again, hundreds of thousands, millions of slaves imported from 1700 to 1789, and you're going to have a large population of enslaved people in Haiti. So some 90% of the population of Haiti by 1789 was enslaved Africans. About 3% of the population were white. Okay, so 3% of the population was white. These generally tend to be landowners, the wealthy, those who own the slaves. Well, there's also 7% of Haiti's population that is free blacks, okay? And it's going to be this free black population that is going to be the ones doing the revolting in 1789. So the way that French Haiti worked was different than the slavery we've talked about in the English colonies. There's some differences in French slavery, Spanish slavery, English slavery. Well, one thing that the French are going to do different than the English and the Americans is they're going to be more likely to manumit the children of slaves and masters. So you would have slave masters in both the United States, before that British colonial era, French colonies, Spanish colonies, would have sexual relations with slaves, and you would have a child as the product of this relationship. Well, in British colonies and in the United States, these children were generally kept enslaved. Jefferson, for example, kept his children with Sally Hemings enslaved, and you would see masters keep their children enslaved for their entire life. So that's the way it was done in the English colonies. The French, it's going to be a little bit different. They have this practice of, if a master has a child with a slave, they usually free that child at birth. They'll free the child at birth. They'll provide him with an education. Now, whether they're going to be accepted as a full child, actually sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, but they are going to be provided with education. Sometimes the master's going to leave the slave child part of his inheritance, and they're going to be brought up free. Okay, so you'll have this free blacks in Haiti that receive an education, receive some wealth. Now, the thing is, in Haiti, they're not going to be given a perfect equality because there will be some racial restrictions for these free blacks. So they will inherit wealth, they will get an education, and in Haiti, you're going to see free blacks serving in certain positions you wouldn't see in British or the United States. Things like militias. They'll allow free blacks to serve in militias, hold firearms, which you didn't see very often in the United States, except in the North, where there wasn't a large black population. Not only that, free blacks could have small government positions, probably not going to be mayors of any cities, but might hold city councilman positions, things like that. So they're almost going to be this economic and political and military middle class. They're not like the 90% slaves, in that they have rights and they can achieve a certain level of political and economic power. But the French are going to keep the top positions, things like governor, most mayors, the very generals, stuff like that. That's going to be reserved for whites. So there's some race restrictions in Haiti, but you will see some free blacks achieve a lot more than you're going to see in the United States. So it's this middle class that will be formed, educated middle class. Well, the free black population, being well educated, will be reading a lot of the same Enlightenment literature that the people in the United States had read when they went through their revolution, and a lot of the same Enlightenment literature that the people in France have been reading when they went through their revolution. So they're well educated on men deserve certain rights, that type of thing. So when the French Revolution breaks out in 1789, a number of free blacks in Haiti will say, wait a minute, we're denied positions up at the top here in Haiti. That's reserved for whites. We think we should revolt and we should fight for these top positions. And you can basically see this in almost any revolution. American Revolution was these upper middle class elites revolting against the British. They couldn't have, representation in Parliament. French Revolution, very similar. This Haitian Revolution, this middle class rising up against the elites. Generally, the lower class doesn't rise up because they don't have the education and the means to rise up. So it's usually the middle class will spark these revolutions. Well, these free blacks will start revolting in 1789, and you're going to see these warfare between the free blacks and the whites in Haiti. It's a lot more complicated than that. And then I actually should pause and say Haitian Revolution is incredibly, incredibly complicated. The American Revolution, some people don't say it's not even a revolution because it's not very complicated. Haitian Revolution is going to be incredibly, incredibly, incredibly complicated. It's going to be bloody, which the American Revolution isn't very bloody. It's going to be chaotic. We're going to see one group rise up, another group then take over, another group take over, and it is going to result in a lot of political and social change. Now, in the United States, we see a lot of political change. We don't see a lot of social and economic change, which we'll see in Haiti. But the free black population starts fighting the white population, and from 1789 to about 1791, it's essentially a class war. The free black middle class versus the elite whites in Haiti. Well, in 1791, things are going to change. What happens in 1791 is that this chaos of the middle class fighting the upper class will start to make its way down to the enslaved population. By the way, I should point out the free black population, they're fighting to control the government. They're fighting to control the slaves in Haiti. That's just, they want the position that the whites have at top. Again, a sort of a class warfare. Well, the enslaved African population, they see the elites at the top fighting. They're going to start to rise up because maybe we can use this chaos to get our freedom. And you're going to see throughout the countryside of Haiti these slave rebellions within this Haitian Revolution. Well, at this point, the free black population is unable to dislodge the white population. The whites generally have the money and the firearms, things like that, because they have the greater wealth. And so the free black population is unable to win by 1791. Now they see this enslaved population rising up, and they're going to make the decision, in order to win this thing, we've got to add to our sort of revolutionary message that we're going to end slavery. That way we can get the enslaved population to join us in revolting, or join us in fighting this white population. And so you'll see the free black population add ending slavery to their message. This is going to enlist the support of the enslaved population, and what had been a class war, essentially free black middle class versus elite whites, is now essentially going to be a race war. You'll have, again, the free black population calling for an end to slavery, the enslaved population joining the free black population. Now it's going to be a race war, and you're going to see blacks attacking whites, whites attacking blacks. Generally what's going to happen here is whites will control the cities. They use their wealth and resources to maintain control of cities. But in the countryside, it'll be free blacks, enslaved population. And from 1791 to 1800, Haiti's going to turn chaotic. It really is. This, again, is going to be a true revolution. You'll have one power taken over. You'll have brutality, bloodshed. I mean, this is the true definition of a revolution, unlike the American Revolution. Very bloody, bloody stuff. You see that in some of these pictures here. It looks like a white ship captain throwing blacks overboard, blacks hanging up this French officer. Very, very, very chaotic. Well, it's in the midst of this in 1800 that Napoleon is going to buy Louisiana from Spain. Again, Napoleon buys this knowing that this stuff is going on. He's aware that the Haitian Revolution is happening, but what Napoleon thinks is that this chaos, this bloodshed, I can bring it to an end and restore order to Haiti, and we can make money off of it. Now, it kind of seems foolish that Napoleon thinks this, but actually, I should point out, Napoleon also thinks that he can re-enslave the enslaved population and get them back to work in the plantations growing sugar again. Again, that sounds foolish to us today, but Napoleon thinks it because essentially he was able to restore order to a chaotic France. What he said is that the people of France, they preferred centralized authority over the chaos of the revolution, even if it meant giving up some of the rights they'd gotten under the new Republican and Democratic government. They would rather have stability and me in control of France than the chaos that the French Revolution offered. And he thinks the same thing's going to happen with Haiti. This is so chaotic, and it's been so chaotic for the past decade, that if I go in there and I restore order, we'll see the slaves would prefer being slaves to being to the chaos that's been consuming Haiti for the last decade. So Napoleon buys it thinking that he can restore order to Haiti fairly efficiently. So 1800, he makes a secret deal with Spain. 1801, the deal's going through. And it's at this point that Napoleon is going to send his soldiers to Haiti with orders to re-enslave the enslaved population, restore order, and get Haiti back up and producing sugar. At this point, we'll have taken over French Louisiana, what's now French Louisiana, and we'll get food going down there, and we'll have this sugar output going on, and then we'll be able to reinforce our military. So Napoleon will send 30,000 troops to Haiti with the intention of restoring order. And I should point out the French are, again, the most powerful military in the world. These are French troops that just fought the British in 1790s, been fighting all throughout Europe, as a matter of fact, in the 1790s. Best trained soldiers in the entire world. Well, these 30,000 troops are going to arrive in Haiti about 1802, and when they get there, they're going to discover that it's not going to be as easy restoring order as Napoleon had assumed. One thing they're going to find is that the free black population is just as educated in military as they had been. They'd gone through 10 years of war. They know the conditions, obviously, in Haiti better. They've been trained in the same military manuals that the French have been trained in. Again, the free black population been educated in the same things that the French military have been operated in. But now they know the land better, and they're going to know the same tactics the French have. And so we'll see when the French show up, they're going to be defeated in a number of battles, including this battle depicted here, this Battle of Vertières, by the free black and enslaved forces, or former enslaved forces. And they're going to discover that, again, people that were enslaved would prefer freedom over order if that's the choice they're going to be given. And so the French are going to face a number of defeats in Haiti to the black forces, the Haitian forces. So that's going to be one thing that Napoleon doesn't count on, a much better military than he had anticipated. Not only that, but he didn't factor in disease. So Haiti is this tropical region. Most of the soldiers coming over are from France, places where you very rarely see malaria, yellow fever. They hadn't acquired these diseases as children. They had no inherited or acquired immunities to these diseases. So when their forces get over, about half of them are going to get sick and die very quickly, or get sick and become so debilitated that they can't fight. So when you combine these two things, this disease that these French soldiers are going to get and the defeats they're going to face for Haitian soldiers, the French army will be reduced from 30,000 to by 1803, it'll be down to 7,000. So in a little over a year, the French army has been reduced to a quarter of what it had been when Napoleon sent them over. This news is going to arrive at Napoleon's desk in 1803. Now, there's a story, I don't know if this is true, that Napoleon, his officer calls him up, again, doesn't call him up, but I like using the phone, and says, hey, Napoleon, dude, your plan for Haiti isn't going to happen. We keep getting defeated. The island's not coming back. The people do not want to be re-enslaved. This place is lost. And the story goes that after learning this news, Napoleon says, damn sugar, damn coffee, another thing that was going on in Haiti, damn colonies, throws everything off of his desk, and basically decides, I want to be out of this whole new world game. This if I'm not getting Haiti back, what's the point of devoting all these resources to the new world? And it's right at this time, and this isn't exactly how it happens. I like to imagine it's right as this happens. So he's all pissed. Oh, Haiti's not coming back. And right at this time, Napoleon gets a knock on his door. And this knock on his door is going to be 3 Americans. Again, this isn't exactly how it happens, but I like to imagine it this way. And these Americans come in, and they're carrying a briefcase, and Napoleon's like, what the hell do you want? Again, I don't know how to do a French accent. And the Americans are going to be, shit, what's going on with this dude? But they're going to come in, and they're going to be saying, we have a message from President Jefferson. President Jefferson is concerned about this American commerce down the Mississippi. So we have $10 million, and we would like to purchase this tiny area right here of Louisiana, east of the Mississippi River. So again, France controls everything west of Mississippi except for this area down here where there's a little bit of area that's east of the Mississippi. Jefferson had sent these Americans with $10 million because they wanted to purchase this area, because that meant that the French could not entirely shut off American commerce. They'd always control one aspect or one side of the Mississippi. So if the U.S. got into a disagreement with France, sure, you can put cannons on one side of the river, but the American ships can just sort of sail towards the other side of the river. You'll always control half of the Mississippi, so they can't shut it down. Again, you have that deal with Spain, so they can't shut down the Mississippi River through this area. So this would basically open up this area to American ships coming down. So you can't shut the river down if you get upset with the United States, which again is Jefferson's main concern. So these guys come in, we've got $10 million, we want to buy this small area of Louisiana. Well, Napoleon is going to look around, and he just got this bad news about Haiti, and he's going to say, sit down. And what he's going to tell the Americans is, I'll tell you guys what, you give me $15 million, you take the whole damn thing. We're not going to use this anymore. Haiti's gone. We don't have any reason for this area. We're going to use this to grow food. There's no point to it anymore. I know you guys, you Americans, aren't going to sell this land back to the British, who we really hate. I know you'll do a good job of populating this region, and you'll prevent British expansion as probably as good as we could do. So we're not going to use this anymore. We could use the cash. Give us $15 million. I know you guys pay back your money because Hamilton had managed to pay back the national debt, and hopefully that'll continue to go on. So you guys will pay your debts, you'll prevent British expansion, and again, we're not using this anymore anyway. So how about $15 million for the whole thing? Well, the Americans are going to be like, they don't have permission to do this. They don't know exactly what the president or Congress is going to say, but this is such a good deal. They'll say, yeah, let's do it. And so instead of paying $10 million for this tiny bit of Louisiana, they're going to purchase this whole area for $15 million. I don't have the exact numbers here. It's something like 4 cents an acre is what this is going to come out to be. So they make this deal, and they're going to come back to the United States with this huge news. By the way, what do you think Spain thought about this? They're pissed. They basically, had sold to France for a buffer to the United States. Now this is just moving the United States even quicker to right near their good stuff. They're furious. Making things even worse is that, it's not 100% clear exactly what this area is going to include. United States is basing it off LaSalle's claim of all rivers flowing in the Mississippi, all land touching those rivers, but nobody even really knows how far these rivers go. There's not been a scientific exploration in these areas, so Spain's really freaking out here. So Spain's freaking out, but the United States is incredibly happy. Now this area is part of the U.S. Well, Jefferson's initially going to have a couple problems because is it constitutional for the U.S. government to purchase land from another nation? That's not in the Constitution. I mean, it says you can make treaties, but it doesn't say anything about purchasing land. So when this Louisiana Purchase news comes over to the U.S. Senate, Jefferson approves the treaty, but it's got to go to the Senate. A couple of Federalists will say, hey, Mr. Constitutional guy, where in the Constitution does it say you can purchase land? But everybody's going to basically say, dude, just shut up. This is such a good deal. Just pass it through. So this is going to get approved fairly easily in Congress, or I'm sorry, in the Senate after it's done. All right, so Jefferson has just purchased all of this land. Well, this is going to bring up a lot of questions. So we've got all this land. How are we going to make states out of it? Well, there's going to be a big debate shortly after the purchase. What do we do with this land? What they're going to do is they're going to basically reapply the rules of the Northwest Territory to this area for the most part. So when you get 5,000 people in a region, you can become a territory. When you become a territory, you can set up a territorial government. When you get 60,000, you become a state. That's going to be pushed through. The slavery thing is not going to be pushed through. As we mentioned, the idea in the Northwest Ordinance is we want to eventually get rid of slavery, but we can't immediately down here, but that's going to be the goal going forward. Well, what about here in Louisiana? Why don't we just say no slavery in this area, because we got all these hopped up in this enlightenment, we know slavery is wrong, why not apply it out here? Well, some slaveholders are going to use the Haitian Revolution to argue against that ban on slavery in Louisiana. And their argument is going to focus on the fact that there are a number of slaves in Louisiana, especially this lower area where the French and the Spanish have been settling for a long time. There's a large enslaved population down here, and you're going to get some of these Southerners, and we're about to see this slavery start taking over the mind of Southerners, but some of these Southerners are going to argue that, hey, if we end slavery here, this would mean freeing this enslaved population down here. Again, I don't have numbers off the top of my head, maybe 20,000 enslaved Africans here. This is going to mean a large free black population. We saw what happened in Haiti with the free black population. This is going to be a thing we're going to see in the United States. People aren't going to blame the Haitian Revolution on slavery and inequality. They're going to blame it on free blacks. And so they'll say that if we prevent slavery from being here and we end slavery, that would mean freeing a lot of people here. And when you free blacks, you get situations like Haiti. Maybe they will then expand this slave revolt to include these areas of the United States that still have slavery. So I don't think we should end slavery in this region. As a matter of fact, what I think should happen is that we should allow whatever states come out of this region to choose whether or not to have slavery. Now, when this debate's happening, 1803 and in 1804, the idea of slavery becoming a major issue is still not a thing just yet. So they're going to decide, we'll carry over the Northwest Ordinance rules except for the one on slavery. So this is going to be something to come out of it. Another sort of minor thing to come out of this debate is, what do we do about this population down here? They're Catholic, they're French speaking, they're going to just come into the Union as equal citizens. Again, there's still this anti-Catholic bias you see in a lot of states, but we do have, again, substantial number of Catholics in certain parts of the U.S., so there will be some debate, but in general, we've got to work with this multi-religious thing, and so all these citizens here will come in as equal citizens. All the French citizens will come in as American citizens once this land's taken over. So Jefferson, you've got this Louisiana territory, and again, it's going to be brought into the Union, similar rules that we saw with Northwest Ordinance. Now, this idea of free blacks causing the Haitian Revolution, this is going to have another result on the United States, or another significance to the U.S. because it makes a lot of people nervous, particularly these states here with slave populations, you're going to start to see immediately after the Haitian Revolution a lot of these states passing laws banning freeing your slaves without government approval, or saying that if you are freed by your master, you have to leave the state. In general, the idea was, again, late 1700s, this Enlightenment idea is going around. We're going to end slavery. How we're going to do that, we're not 100% sure. But what you saw is a lot of sort of enlightened thinkers that don't think they can get along without the economics of slavery, sort of pushing it off until their death. Like George Washington owned slaves until the day he died, but the second he died, he freed his slaves. Basically said, I don't want to get rid of these slaves because I need them economically. It's what I depend on. But the second I die, we're going to free the slaves. And it was almost assumed that's what's going to happen to all slave owners down here. Use the slaves until your death, and then after that, free them, and eventually we'll end slavery. After this Haitian Revolution, you're not going to see that very much longer. At least, you'll see a couple slave owners continue to do that. But a lot of other slave owners, after this point, we don't want to free our slaves because we're worried about the free black population. So you'll see guys like Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, who had been talking about ending slavery and freeing their slaves upon death. They stopped doing that. And then you get along with these states saying no longer can free blacks live in these states without government approval. This is going to push people away from freeing slaves. So this is like step one in this process we're about to see, where Southerners are going to go from this mindset of slavery is morally wrong, we need to get rid of it, to we can't get rid of it, to it being positive good. And so you can sort of credit the Haitian Revolution with that. Again, I don't know if the Haitian Revolution is responsible. I guess I would put the Southerners responsible for using slaves in the first place, and coming up with this belief that it was the free blacks and not slavery itself. All right, so Jefferson has now purchased Louisiana. Big question's going to come up. What exactly did I purchase? How far does this go? Again, this area, this had been populated by Europeans. We'd seen Europeans going out this for 100 years. We saw French fur traders traveling this region for a long period of time. But the people that were going to this region and doing a lot of this trading, they weren't very well educated. They didn't journal a whole lot. They didn't draw maps when they went out there. So even though you had people going out here, you didn't have a good idea of what's out here. Well, this is going to be a problem for Jefferson because, again, the Louisiana Purchase is based off the idea that all these rivers flowing into the Mississippi. If we don't know how far these rivers go, we don't know how far we've just purchased. So what Jefferson's going to want to do is, one, find out how far this thing extends to. Not only that, he wants to find out if this possibly goes all the way to the Pacific, because if this is based on the rivers flowing in the Mississippi and we got one going to the Pacific, man, that would be great. The United States has just gotten into this China trade. Basically, China has started to purchase a lot of furs from North America, and if we can get a river that extends all the way out to the Pacific, we can start sending furs to China, making a ton of money. That'll bring a lot of money to the U.S. economy. So Jefferson wants to find out, does the rivers flow in the Pacific? He also wants to find out what's out here, besides fur. We've had fur traders come back for a long time, but is there anything else? Is there gold? Is there silver? Because the way Jefferson sees this is, if we don't get people out here, doesn't matter if we bought this from France, the British might come in and take it if they get people before us. So we need to get Americans out here. And the only way we can do that is to find ways that are profitable, things that are profitable out here, to move them out here before the British get out here. So Jefferson wants to learn stuff about this area. So he's generally concerned about economics, populating the region, and so he knows we need to explore this. He's also actually concerned about the people of the region. So Jefferson, he had these forward-thinking ideas about race and slavery initially. We're going to talk about, he goes back on these ideas later on. But for the time, again, today you wouldn't think it was progressive. He did have some progressive beliefs on Indian and American relations. So basically, Jefferson, he envisions a future where you're going to have what's essentially a melding of Indian and American or European, however you want to put it, society. He basically thinks that Indians are capable of rational thought, and he believes that one day Indians and Europeans will start cohabitating. Indians will adopt European ways, and he has evidence. We've talked about the Mississippi culture down here, what's been happening with them, and he thinks that eventually this will happen. But he's concerned because he knows that a lot of Indians, will get taken advantage of by whites if you allow them to. So what Jefferson wants to do is he basically wants to make contact with the Indians of this region to introduce them to the concept of these whites coming in. He basically wants to warn them, you're going to get some people coming in trying to take advantage of you. This is how you can prepare yourself. One of the things you want to do is inform these Indians. You have a new ruler, you have a new father is what way you would put it. He's going to have these medals printed up to give to these Indian groups, and he's going to ask them to prepare for these coming whites, make peace with one another, and to sort of accept the fact that the United States is ruled. And again, what he thinks is if you can prepare these Indians, prevent them from selling their land, you'll get them on fairly equal economic conditions to the Americans coming in, and then you can basically see the melding of these cultures. I'm oversimplifying things here significantly, but he doesn't want to see what you've seen in a lot of areas where Indians essentially get pushed out, left with nothing. He wants them to basically be prepared for what's about to happen, what happened to these Indian groups, particularly Indian groups here, and starting to happen to these Indian groups out there. And there's even talk, maybe even making a huge Indian reservation out of this region that the United States just purchased, maybe just making west of the Mississippi River into the areas where Indians live. So Jefferson, again, you'd like to maybe think that in a perfect world he'd be wanting the Indians to preserve their culture, preserve all their land. It's early 1800s, so not a lot of people are thinking that way. Some are, but for an average politician's mindset, Jefferson basically thinks we need to prepare the Indian people of the region for the changes that are about to come. So economics, we need to learn how to make money out here, how to get people out here, need to prepare the Indians of this region. Jefferson also wants to learn more about the area for scientific reasons. So Jefferson is just curious. He wants to learn what's out there. Jefferson had been studying animals for his entire life. He putting together this garden at his estate in Virginia with all these different animals. He had been digging up bones, or he'd been interested in these scientific studies of what he would call a mastodon. He basically believed that, and I believe that they had dug it up a partial woolly mammoth. I'm not 100% sure what it was, but he thought it was this creature that would eat buffalo on the plain. He thought it was this huge monster. He thought the thing still existed on the plains. He wants to see if that's real. He wants to learn what plants you have out there, what different animals you have out there. He also has this scientific curiosity about the people out there. What are the Indians like? How are they different than the Indians we know? What are their daily habits? So he wants to find out more about Louisiana, not just for political, economic reasons, but he also wants to find out because he's genuinely curious about things. He just wants to know things because he wants to know things. So how can you accomplish this? How can you prepare these Indians, learn about the region scientifically, economically? What can you do? Well, Jefferson is going to look in 1803 to finding some explorers to go out here. And he'd actually been debating doing this when Spain still controlled this region, or when France took over this region, sending people out there anyway. So he'd been talking about this for a while, but once the U.S. purchased this Louisiana Purchase, he's going to put this into effect. He's basically going to hire two guys. He actually only hires one. The one guy's going to hire the other guy, but he's going to hire a childhood friend, a guy named Meriwether Lewis, to put together a scientific expedition to learn what the United States just purchased. What did we just buy? Well, Meriwether Lewis, you don't need to know a lot about him. He'd served in the U.S. Army. He was a really smart guy. Jefferson actually, in Virginia, when Jefferson was a young man, he would always see this kid coming around that was always asking Jefferson questions, very curious, just a intellectual mind, smart guy, and goes off, serves in the military, gets some field experience. And so Jefferson is going to look to this childhood friend, this Meriwether Lewis, and he's going to say to him, get together a couple dozen guys, and I want you to go out here, find out what we purchased, keep your journals, and when you get back, I want to tell the American people about this area. I want you to also find how far this Missouri River goes, find if it goes all the way to the Pacific. Any Indians you encounter, tell them the United States is now in control here, and tell them, make peace with one another, prepare for these whites coming in, just sort of be on your toes. And just learn as much as you can about the region. If you find any cool plants, any interesting animals, send them back to me. So, Lewis, I need you to go out there. Jefferson's going to go to Congress. He's going to get some money set aside. He's going to get this money to Lewis and say, hire the people you need, buy the equipment you need, and go out there. Well, Lewis will start out, he's going to purchase all these dried goods that can be preserved long periods of time. He's going to get guns, in case they need to hunt on the way. He's going to purchase a boat. Gets actually an air gun, which is weird because an air gun, like a BB gun, it essentially can kill people. That's a weird side story. But he starts putting this expedition together, but he realizes, man, I could use some help in this. He's going to hire an old Army buddy, a guy named William Clark, to go along with him. Hey, I need some assistance putting some guys together. Can you help me along? William Clark, he's going to offer him to be his co-captain on this expedition. So William Clark will accept this, and he's going to join Lewis as co-captain of the expedition. William Clark is going to bring a slave of his named York along. We'll talk briefly about him in a second. But these guys are going to go out and recruit. At different parts of the expedition, the number's going to change. I think at its lowest point, it's maybe 20, but at one point, I think it's almost up towards 50 men they hired, and as men are going to go down as they start sending men back periodically to deliver the stuff back to Jefferson. But these guys start getting guys together. They're going to get a boat, and they're going to head out to this city called St. Louis. It had been formed very end of the French period when French controlled this Louisiana the first time, so about 1763. The Spanish had only briefly ruled the area. As a matter of fact, when Lewis and Clark are going to get to St. Louis, they get there, you still have the Spanish flag flying over there. Again, France, a lot of these areas hadn't taken over control of Louisiana, even though they ruled it for those brief period of time. So when Lewis and Clark get out there, what they do is they have the Spanish flag lowered, the French flag goes up for about 30 seconds, then the U.S. flag goes up in St. Louis. So they gather all these men together. They're going to get in this boat. They're going to start bringing their supplies along, and they're going to head up this Missouri River. And again, Jefferson's telling them, find out stuff about this region, how to make money, tell the Indians you encounter what things are like, and find out if this Missouri goes all the way to the Pacific. And he's going to tell them if it doesn't go out to the Pacific, just go out to the Pacific anyway for scientific reasons. But he also, and this is sort of a sub-thing of the Lewis and Clark expedition, the Spanish are upset about the Louisiana Purchase. Some of them are threatening war, so Jefferson's going to say, make sure you're being friends with Indians, so if there's a fight with Spain, they'll be on our side. And then also maybe see if you can learn anything about what the Spanish actually control out here. So that's going to be a sort of sub-mission. Well, Lewis and Clark are going to get their guys together. They're going to start heading up the Missouri. It's going to be slow going. There's a lot of interesting tales these guys are going to have. One of the guys gets appendicitis and dies on the way. But besides that, they're not going to have a whole heck of a lot of trouble. There is going to be an encounter almost with the Sioux Indians of this region. So up to this point in U.S. history, we've been mainly talking about these Indians to the east, these agriculturalist, sedentary groups, Mississippi culture down here, these sedentary agriculturalist groups here, Northwest Territory, these groups that have been Europeanized to an extent out in this area. Well, the Lewis and Clark expedition are going to be passing through this plains region where you still have hunter-gatherer Indians. Again, long time ago, Indians started adopting agriculture, except in areas where agriculture's just simply doesn't work, and that's going to be a lot of these plains regions. So when Lewis and Clark pass through this area, they're going to meet with these Sioux Indians. The Sioux, essentially hunter-gatherers, they had adopted the horse. The horse had made its way up from Spanish New Spain, made its way up to the plains. The Sioux had been one of the first groups to get their hands on the horse, and they'd entirely adopted their culture of the horse. The horse allowed them to hunt more effectively, allowed them to defeat enemies more effectively, and the Sioux had essentially created this empire out of this territory. So it's a hunting-gathering empire, which is something you don't really hear very much. Hunter-gatherers are usually thinking a band of a couple dozen people, but the Sioux were so effective with the horse, they were able to take over so much territory, so many of their enemies, that they started dominating this large region. And as a matter of fact, Jefferson had told Lewis and Clark, these guys are powerful, make allies with them. And so Lewis and Clark meet with the Sioux on their way out there. Again, very different than the Indians that are in the eastern part of North America. There's almost a disagreement between the Sioux and Lewis and Clark. They almost fight, but they get past it. Lewis and Clark will eventually make their way up by the end of 1804 to these Mandan villages. This is one of the few sedentary agriculturalist Indians out in this area. They're going to spend the winter of 1804 with these guys. It's right around this point they're going to start acquiring people to help them on the rest of their journey. They're going to find a French fur trader. Again, they're not going into areas where Europeans hadn't been before. They're going into areas that the French had been exploring this region for 100 years, and fur traders have been going for a very long time. So they're going to hire this guy named Charbonneau, who knows his way down the Missouri. He's been down there before. He's going to bring along his wife, Sacagawea, and they're going to escort Lewis and Clark as they proceed in 1805. So you're going to go up the Missouri. As you get upriver, you're pushing against the rapids, things like that. The journey's going to be a little bit more difficult as they go along. Again, a lot of crazy stories are going to happen here we can't get into. They're going to finally reach essentially the end of the Missouri River when they reach the Rocky Mountains. Rivers don't go up mountains, which will end the U.S. claim to that Louisiana extends to the Pacific, but Jefferson had asked them to go to the Pacific anyway. So in 1805, they're going to take their boat, and they're going to essentially bring it upriver, actually, for a little bit. They have to carry it along land for a while. Then they're going to cross over the Rocky Mountains, and they're going to start descending these rivers here, eventually this Columbia River, to make their way down to the Missouri River. Now the Columbia River down to what's today Washington. So Missouri here, then to the Columbia River, and eventually they're going to reach the Pacific. So one thing I should point out, they were not the first to go to this, first Europeans to go to this area. Certainly not the first people. Indians have been around here for a long time. The French fur traders have been here for a long time. And when they go down this Columbia, they're not going to be the first Americans, people of European ancestry, to get to this region either, because you'd had fur traders going up and down this coast for decades at this point. And so when they get down here, they actually arrive right after an English fur trading vessel had left. So the people here aren't really surprised to see these white-skinned people. Now, York, this is going to be the first time a number of Indians had seen a black person before, simply because these French fur traders, they didn't bring Africans with them usually. So York's going to be unusual, but the people with white skin are been around this area for a long time. So they reach the Pacific. They're going to spend the winter of 1805 to the beginning of 1806 here along the Pacific. They build this place called Fort Clatsop, and they're going to spend the winter there. And we actually know exactly where they go. One of the fun things about Lewis and Clark expedition is, maybe fun isn't the right word, but they're taking mercury pills along the way, because this is a bunch of young men on their expedition. They're encountering a lot of different women along the way, and they're concerned about STDs, and in particular they're concerned about syphilis. So one of the treatments for syphilis back then was mercury. Now mercury caused a lot of other problems that we today know about, but they didn't know about them, so they would take mercury as a treatment for syphilis. Well, mercury weighs more than just about anything, so when you pee after taking these mercury pills, you peed out mercury. So what historians have done and archaeologists is basically they've tried to retrace Lewis and Clark's steps. So they're keeping journals along this way, and they'll say we made camp here, and so historians will try to figure out as close as possible where they think they made camp, and then they'll start digging, and if they find these pools of mercury, they'll realize this is definitely where they made camp because they pee out the mercury, and mercury's not going to naturally pool like that. So we know this is absolutely where they make camp because we have this mercury. So kind of a little interesting side note. We know where Lewis and Clark went because they peed mercury. So anyway, they make their way to the Pacific. They stay there. It's really interesting. Sacagawea had never seen the coast before. She insists on going and seeing this dead whale that had washed up at the beach. But they're there. They're going to then make their way back up the Columbia. At one point, the expedition to learn more about the region is going to split up. One group's going to go one way, another group's going to go another way. This is actually at the time that Meriwether Lewis, he encounters these Blackfeet Indian, and he's going to think a Blackfoot Indian stealing something from him, shoots one of these Blackfeet Indian, and then Meriwether Lewis, he's so, like, I don't know, these guys have got problems. He puts like a medal of Jefferson on the dead body of the Blackfeet Indian. So whereas Jefferson's telling him to be friendly to these Indian groups, he shoots an Indian for stealing some stuff, and we'll see a lot of Blackfeet are going to come to resent Americans later on, and some people pointed out all the way back to this first encounter between Americans with Meriwether Lewis and this first encounter with the Blackfeet. Anyway, so they make their way back. They're eventually going to get on the Missouri. The return expedition, if you're going downriver, it's way easier than having to paddle upriver. So the return expedition is not going to take very long at all. They'll reach St. Louis by the end of civilization, as they understand it, by the end of 1806. Now, it's at this point we need to talk about what they accomplish. Well, one thing Lewis and Clark are going to accomplish is that they are going to give the U.S. some claim to this Oregon territory. So by going out to this region with a number of men on their expedition, we're going to see some of these men will be hired on by fur trading companies. They'll return to this Pacific Northwest, and after they return to this Pacific Northwest, you'll see a number of American fur trading outposts set up in Oregon. Now this is going to be interesting because we're going to see the British are going to show up with their own fur trading outposts shortly thereafter, but you're not going to see the British be able to control Oregon because the Lewis and Clark expedition had gotten people out to this region before the British, and so you kind of give them credit for coming out to this region first, and then this is going to get fur traders coming out to this area soon thereafter, which establishes an American presence in this region, which is going to prevent the British from taking Oregon before Americans do. But honestly, besides that, Lewis and Clark, they're not that important. Well, first of all, they're not the only expeditions sent west by Jefferson. There's going to be another guy named Zebulon Pike who will head out there under Jefferson's orders. Kind of. There's a little bit of side note there. And another expedition under a guy named Freeman and his partner Custis, they're going to head out and do another scientific expedition. Now, Pike and Freeman and Custis will eventually be captured by the Spanish, but I would argue that Pike actually does a good job than these two of making scientific observations in the West. So, they're not the only expedition. They're certainly not the first people out here. Some people think these guys are the first to cross a continent. I don't know for sure, but I'm betting there's at some point in history an American Indian somehow got lost somewhere, made his way from the Atlantic to the Pacific. I could be wrong about that. But I do know, and we do know, there had been people that had crossed the continent before. Cabeza de Vaca had landed here in Texas and made its way over to the Pacific. And the Spanish were regularly you'd see Spanish officials going from California to Texas and Louisiana all the time. So, the Spanish do this on a regular basis. So that's not anything new there. But again, you might argue, all right, well, they're doing it in this northern area. They're the first to go this northern route. Well, that's not true either. There had actually been an English explorer named Alexander Mackenzie who had gone out here before them. So they're not the first to cross the continent. Again, they're not the first to be in this area. There are plenty of fur traders before these guys came along, and fur traders have been exploring this region before them. So it's not like they're the first to come to these particular areas either. So they're not really the first in anything. You could maybe make the argument they're the first scientific explorers in these particular areas, because fur traders weren't taking scientific observations in this area before that, or fur traders weren't taking scientific observations over here. So you could maybe argue that. You could argue they maybe are the first to cross the Rocky Mountains in this particular region. But again, I would argue that that doesn't necessarily make them important. Another sort of thing that I think is a little bit overrated about William Clark and Meriwether Lewis is that they actually don't finish their job. So one of the things Jefferson had sent these guys out there to do was to write journals so they could be published, so Americans could come out there, follow them up, and see what these guys, to get out there, to move out there. Well, these guys, they missed a lot of observations that they probably should have made. Like, they passed through the areas near the Black Hills. They didn't record that there was gold there, which, maybe you would have gotten a lot of Americans moving that region to exploit that gold. Other things, they just went for months, particularly Meriwether Lewis went for months without writing in his journal. He just stopped, even though that was his job. United States government's paying you to write your journals. He just didn't do it for a while. Not only that, when they get back, Lewis, what Jefferson hired him to do was to organize his journals for publication, because again, we want to get Americans out there. We want to establish American political control of this region. Well, Lewis didn't do that. Now, William Clark, let me just point out, he's going to get back. He's going to become an Indian agent for the United States. He's later going to serve as a general in the War of 1812. He's going to have a successful career. He's going to be fine. Meriwether Lewis, when he gets back, he's not going to do well, and he's not going to finish his job of publishing his journals. As a matter of fact, he's going to take his celebrity a little too well. So when these guys get back, St. Louis, they're going to all these parties. People are asking them, what you see out there? What cool stories do you have? Clark, goes out. He has fun, but he's going to go off and do his job. Lewis starts drinking all the time. Next day he's supposed to write in his journals, doesn't write in them. Jefferson's going to be writing them 1807. Hey, dude, write your journals. 1808 he's writing them. Hey, dude, write your journals. Lewis not doing his job. Part of the reason people think that he's not doing his job, some people think he gets syphilis while he's out there, and maybe he's suffering the effects of syphilis. People think he just gets depression. Even though it's not super important, these guys did do something incredibly cool, and sometimes it's hard living up to the expectations of something that cool. And so some people say Lewis, he just gets depressed. Other people say the partying just led him to be an alcoholic. He just fell into substance abuse. But for whatever the reason, could not get his journals done, didn't do the job he was supposed to do. And actually, this is going to get Jefferson eventually to say to Meriwether Lewis, listen, if you can't do your job, I want you to move out here with me, come back to the East Coast. I'm going to sit there while you write this thing. Well, Lewis, as he's making his way to this East Coast, at one point he's going to be crossing through, I could be wrong about this, I think it's somewhere in Georgia. He's going to stop at this boarding house. When he's at the boarding house, he's going to kill himself. There's this woman that owns this boarding house. She rents a room to Lewis. She then goes off, does her stuff. Later on, she's going to peek through this keyhole and see Lewis. She hears a gunshot, and she's going to see Lewis basically had shot himself, took off a chunk of his skull, his brain's exposed, didn't die, though, for an hour. This woman, I can imagine she'd be scared. She sort of seeing this guy, what happened to him, and just waits for him to die out. So he kills himself, never actually gets his job done. Now, there are some people that, conspiracy theorists, that think that Meriwether Lewis was murdered. And probably the biggest proponent of this was a guy I read about that he basically said, why would Meriwether Lewis kill himself? That would be like Buzz Aldrin killing himself after coming home from the moon. This guy just accomplished a lot of this stuff. He's famous. Why would he kill himself? Well, I say to that idiot, Buzz Aldrin did almost kill himself. So Buzz Aldrin came back from the moon. He was sort of under the weight of accomplishing something so crazy early in his life. How are you going to duplicate that? Buzz Aldrin, just like Meriwether Lewis, went through a period where he drank a lot. Thankfully, Buzz Aldrin did not kill himself and was able to recover from his alcoholism. But he was in the very similar situation to Lewis, and he ended up killing himself. So to that conspiracy theorist in particular, that's a horrible example. You just discredited your possibility. And again, Lewis was, all indications were that he was suffering severe depression, so probably killed himself, didn't get his job done. So if you want to compare these guys, Clark, I mean, he's going to handle his early fame well, go on to accomplish other things. Maybe not as cool as Expedition, but Lewis would be somebody like, Amy Winehouse. He accomplishes a lot. Gets Amy Winehouse got her great album out, but then it's hard to top that. Fell into substance abuse, depression, eventually died. Meriwether Lewis, same thing. Accomplished a lot, wasn't able to follow up, and then killed himself. So again, I hate bagging on Lewis and Clark, but they don't actually do what they were supposed to do. So in that regard, Jefferson, it's not that successful, but you really got to say his first term as president was genuinely successful. It really was. You get the Louisiana Purchase. Anything else you do as president is going to be cake, So in 1804, Jefferson's deciding, do I want to serve a second term? He will decide to run for a second term. Again, by this point, even more states are allowing their people to popular vote for president, and he's going to be elected fairly unanimously. As a matter of fact, the Federalist Party had been on a decline significantly. So we're going to have Jefferson enter the second term as president, seeing if he can follow up the successes of his first term.